The evening came heavy and slow, carrying the smell of cut hay and cooling earth. The village fields lay still, their rows of stubble glowing faintly under the sinking sun. From the barn drifted the low sounds of cattle settling for the night, tails swishing, hooves shifting in the straw. At the farmhouse, the door creaked open, and the farmer's wife stepped out to shake the dust from her apron. She stopped. Her eyes caught something she had not seen before. A cat. It sat squarely on the wooden threshold, its body black from ears to tail, so dark it seemed to swallow the last of the light. Its eyes glowed pale green, sharp as glass, unblinking. It did not move. It did not purr. It only watched. The woman whispered, half to herself, half to the empty air, "Where did you come from?" But the cat gave no answer. The chickens in the yard grew uneasy, shuffling closer together, clucking under their breath. A dog barked once from its chain, then fell silent, as if remembering something it should fear. Even the cows in the barn, thick-bodied and slow, stamped their hooves and turned their great eyes toward the doorway. The cat did not blink. It sat perfectly still, as though it had been carved from the wood itself. The farmer came to the door, frowning. He muttered that it was only a stray, that the village had many. But when he reached down to push it aside with his boot, the dog whimpered, the chickens flapped in sudden panic, and the cows bellowed in their stalls. He stopped. The cat did not stir. That night, the family ate their supper with the cat still seated at the threshold, its eyes catching the candlelight. The farmer's wife crossed herself more than once, though no prayer left her lips. The children would not pass the door, choosing instead to climb the stairs by the far wall. By midnight, the candle had burned low. By dawn, the house grew quiet. In the barn, the cows shifted restlessly. Their breath steamed in the cool morning air. But something was wrong. When the farmer's wife came to milk them, she gasped. The buckets filled not with the warm sweetness of milk, but with liquid sharp and bitter, spoiled before it left the cows' bellies. The black cat was gone from the threshold. Only its paw prints remained, pressed faintly in the dust. And the milk was ruined. The morning sun rose pale and thin, as if reluctant to climb into the sky. Smoke curled weakly from the farmhouse chimney, though the fire inside burned strong. Yet the kitchen smelled of bitterness, not bread. The farmer's wife stood over the pail, her face pale. She dipped her finger into the fresh milk, brought it to her lips, and spat it out at once. It was spoiled, sharp as vinegar, sour as rot. She tried another cow, then another. All the same. Each bucket filled with milk already ruined, curdled in the udder before it could be drawn. The farmer cursed under his breath, but his voice was low, heavy with unease. He had seen sickness in cows before, strange fevers, swollen bellies, calves born too weak to stand. But this was different. The animals stood strong, their eyes bright, their hides glossy. Only their milk betrayed them, as if something unseen had poisoned it in the night. By midday, the news had spread across the village. Neighbors gathered at the fence, whispering to one another, their words as uneasy as their eyes. "Every cow in my barn the same," said one farmer. "My goats too," said another. "Milk turned foul before the sun rose. This is no illness. This is a sign." And then, as often happens in villages, the whispers began to knot themselves into one name, the cat. It sat on the threshold, the farmer's wife admitted, her voice tight. From sunset until dawn. It never moved. It only watched. An old woman crossed herself, shaking her head. "Thresholds are not places for beasts. A black cat that guards a doorway brings nothing but ruin. You should have driven it away." But the farmer said nothing. He remembered how the cows had bellowed when he tried to move it, how even the dog had fallen silent. He remembered those green eyes, steady, unblinking. That night, the villagers gathered in the square. They spoke of curses, of omens, of shadows that walked in the shape of animals. Some argued for traps, others for fire. But none dared yet to act. The cat was not seen that evening, and some prayed the matter would end as suddenly as it began. Yet in the barn, the cows shifted uneasily. Their bellies groaned. Their eyes rolled white in the half-dark. They remembered the gaze that had rested on them through the night, and their bodies betrayed them still. By dawn, the milk had soured again. And though the cat was nowhere to be seen, its presence hung over every door, every stall, every whispered word. The barn at night was no place for comfort. The lanterns had long since burned low, and the air hung heavy with the sour tang of ruined milk. The cows shifted in their stalls, stamping and groaning, restless though the hour was late. Their great bodies ached, their bellies knotted, and their eyes gleamed white in the darkness. It was then, in the stillness, that the first whisper came. A low groan, not meant for humans, rumbled from the throat of the oldest cow. Her voice was slow, heavy, yet clear enough for the others to hear. The cat watches. The cat listens. Its eyes turn sweetness into rot. The younger cows answered in frightened murmurs, shifting their weight. We feel it too. Its gaze lingers even when it is gone. Our bodies remember its eyes. The mice in the rafters paused in their scratching. They froze, whiskers twitching, ears keen. They had never heard the cow speak so clearly, not in words that carried meaning. They crept closer, straining to catch each syllable. Another cow groaned, voice trembling like a rope pulled too tight. It sits on the threshold because thresholds are doors. It waits for something to cross. But what does it want of us? Silence followed, broken only by the creak of the barn beams and the rustle of straw. Then the oldest cow answered again, with a sorrow that bent her voice low. It is not hunger. It is not need. It is judgment. We have been chosen. The mice shuddered, their tiny claws clinging to the wood. They did not understand all, but they understood enough. The cat was no ordinary stray. Its stillness was a weight, its eyes a curse. When dawn came, the cows groaned with fresh pain. Their milk, once more, soured before it touched the bucket. The farmer's wife wept in silence, her hands trembling, her apron wet with bitterness. But the mice wasted no time. As the sun rose, they scurried from the barn and into the hedges, carrying the tale on their squeaks and rustles. They told the sparrows, who told the crows, who told the fox. And by nightfall, even the owl knew. The forest whispered with the barn's secret. The black cat had turned its gaze on the cows, and their bodies curdled at the memory of its eyes. And still, the cat returned each night, sitting silent on the threshold, never moving, never speaking, only watching. By the third dawn of spoiled milk, no house in the village was free of fear. The cows bellowed low through the night, their bellies aching, their gifts turned bitter before they could be given. The farmers muttered of ruin, for without milk there would be no butter, no cheese, no trade. Children cried at empty bowls. Women whispered prayers into the smoke of their kitchens, but the prayers fell flat. And always, someone saw the cat. It was there at sunset, sitting on the farmhouse threshold. It was there at midnight, motionless, eyes glinting. And though no one saw it leave, by morning its paw prints dotted the earth. At last, the villagers called a meeting in the square. They came with shawls pulled tight and voices low. Men leaned on their tools as if on weapons. Old women clutched rosaries and muttered of omens. The children were hushed and sent inside. The cat is a curse, one farmer spat. Drive it out, break its spine, and the milk will flow sweet again. But another shook his head. I raised a stick to it last night. My hand froze. My arm would not move. It is not flesh, it is something older. An old woman spoke next, her back bent but her voice sharp. A threshold is a dangerous place. It is neither inside nor outside, neither safe nor wild. A creature that sits on a threshold sits between worlds. That is no cat, it is a sign. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some muttered agreement. Others cursed. No one dared speak too loudly, for even in the square, voices seemed to falter, as though the cat could hear them across the fields. Beyond the square, in the hedgerows, the animals gathered too. The mice told what they had heard in the barn, that the cows spoke of judgment. The sparrows repeated it to the crows. The fox listened, ears flat, tail twitching. The owl, solemn, spread his wings and said, "The old woman is right. A threshold is a line between what is and what is not. The cat waits because something must cross. Perhaps it waits for us. Perhaps it waits for them. But mark me well, it does not come to eat. It comes to weigh." The fox growled low. "Why punish the cows? What law have they broken?" The owl turned his head slowly, his eyes glinting in the half-dark. "Not all judgments are for crimes. Some are for reminders. The earth forgets nothing, though men often do." The crows croaked, flapping harsh wings. "Then let the cat stay. Let it sour their milk. Let the humans grow weak. What do we care if their children cry?" But the hedgehogs quivered, spines rattling. "We care because we drink the streams their cattle feed. We live on the scraps of their harvest. If they fall to ruin, we will not escape it either." Thus both councils ended, the humans with fear and indecision, the animals with division and doubt. And when night came, the cat sat once more on the threshold. Silent. Patient. Its green eyes unblinking. The storm came without warning. One moment the air was still, heavy with the smell of hay and manure. The next, the sky cracked open with lightning. The wind howled down the lanes, rattling shutters and tearing at the thatch. Rain struck the earth in fierce sheets, soaking the fields, hammering against barn and roof. Inside the farmhouse, the family huddled together, eyes wide, listening to the groan of beams. The fire in the hearth hissed and died, leaving only the flicker of oil lamps that wavered in the wind. And then they heard it. Scratch. Once, slow, deliberate, against the wood of the threshold. Scratch. Twice, deeper, as though claws carved the memory of their sound into the grain. Scratch. A third time, long and patient. The farmer's wife covered her mouth with her hands. The children clung to her skirts. Even the dog, usually brave, crept beneath the table, whimpering. The farmer rose, trembling. He dared a glance at the door. Lightning split the sky, and there it was. The cat. Its black body was pressed against the threshold, fur slicked by rain, eyes gleaming like molten glass. It scratched again, though no sound came from its claws this time, only a vibration, low and deep, that seemed to hum in the bones of the house. In the barn, the cows went mad. They thrashed in their stalls, hooves striking wood, horns clattering against the beams. Their groans rose in unison, long and mournful, as if they were calling to something beyond the storm. Milk spilled onto the straw, thick and sour, stinking even before it touched the ground. The villagers woke to the cries. Doors opened, lanterns bobbed in the wind, voices shouted into the rain. But no matter how loud they called to each other, the storm drowned their words, and still the cows moaned, their voices carrying further than any human cry. From the hedgerows, the animals of the forest listened. The fox crouched low, ears flat. The owl gripped his branch so tightly the bark cracked beneath his talons. The crows, usually bold, huddled together in silence. And the mice, who had heard the cows before, squeaked in terror. "It is true," they said. "The scratching is not hunger. It is judgment. It is law." Lightning flashed again. The cat did not move. It sat soaked and silent on the threshold, its claws resting on the wood, its eyes fixed forward. The storm raged around it, but it was untouched, as steady as stone. Inside, the family could not breathe without tasting bitterness. Outside, the cows cried until their voices broke. And when the storm at last began to fade, the rain softening, the thunder rolling into the distance, the village lay restless and broken. No one had slept. No one dared. By dawn, the milk was ruined again. And now, every villager knew, the cat had not come by chance. The storm had broken, but the village was left in ruin of spirit. The cows stood hollow-eyed, their bodies aching. The people moved like shadows, weary from sleepless nights, their voices thin, their hands shaking from hunger and fear. By the sixth dawn, desperation had taken root. The farmer, who had endured more than most, could bear it no longer. His children cried for food, his wife grew pale with worry, his cows wasted in their stalls. With trembling hands he took up a stick, thick, strong, cut from the ash tree behind his field. He told his family to stay inside. He would drive the cat away or die in the attempt. The threshold was not empty. There the cat sat, just as it always had, black, unmoving, eyes fixed on the door. Rain still clung to its fur, though the storm had passed hours ago. It looked up at the farmer as if it had been waiting. "Beast," the man growled, though his voice wavered. "Enough." He raised the stick. His arms shook. His legs locked in place. The cat did not flinch, did not move. It only stared. The farmer's chest grew tight, his breath caught. For a moment, it felt as though his own strength belonged not to him but to the eyes that held him. The villagers gathered, drawn by his defiance. Men came with pitchforks, women with stones. Children peeked from behind shawls. They shouted, they cursed, they begged him to strike. And then it happened. The moment the crowd's voices rose together, the cows bellowed in pain. Their milk turned foul before it could be drawn, spilling sour onto the ground. The women dropped their stones. The men lowered their forks. The air itself grew bitter, thick with the taste of rot. The farmer's stick fell from his hand. His knees buckled. In the hedgerows, the owl had been watching, silent, eyes wide. At last, he spoke, not in the way of men, but in the deep current of dream. That night, while the villagers lay restless, the owl's words slid into their sleep like water into cracked earth. You cannot drive it away. It will not move for anger, nor for fear. The cat does not feed on milk, nor on flesh, nor on blood. It feeds on noise, on names, on pride. So long as you shout and curse, it will stay. But if you keep silence, if you let the night pass without a word, it will have nothing to hold, and it will go. When the people awoke, they remembered the dream. They looked to one another, uneasy but resolute. That night, for the first time in many nights, the village swore to silence. The cat sat once more upon the threshold, its eyes glowing faint. But no voices rose. No curses, no shouts, no names. Only the stillness of a people who had surrendered their tongues to survive. The cows shifted uneasily, but no sour milk spilled. The air grew heavy, but no new bitterness spread. And by dawn, the threshold was empty. Only pawprints remained in the dust, fading with the morning light. The seventh dawn rose clear and cool, the kind of morning the village had almost forgotten. Sunlight slipped between the barns and cottages, gilding the wet grass, warming the fields. Smoke rose steady from chimneys once more, not bitter but clean, carrying the scent of bread and broth. The farmer's wife stepped into the barn, her heart trembling with dread. She pressed her pail beneath the first cow, hands shaking as she drew the milk. Warm, thick, sweet. She dipped her finger, tasted, and wept. It was pure again. Word spread quickly. Neighbors rushed to their stalls, their sheds, their pens. Goats gave clean milk, sheep bleated with ease. The cows lowed softly, their bodies no longer burdened. Relief swept through the village like wind through wheat. Some cried, some laughed, some knelt in prayer. Yet none forgot. For though the threshold was empty, every villager remembered how the cat had sat there, silent and unyielding. They remembered how its eyes had turned sweetness to rot, how their own voices had fed its power. From that day on, they lived carefully with their words. Children were hushed when they cried too loudly at night. Men lowered their tones when they quarreled. Women whispered when speaking of things too sacred to name. Silence became a kind of shield, learned from fear, carried into habit. And in the fields, the animals remembered too. The cows groaned more softly when restless. The mice told their pups of the barn whispers. The owl, watching from the hedgerows, said only, "Thresholds are not doors to be crossed lightly. When the black cat sits, silence is the only answer." Seasons passed. Grass grew tall where the pawprints had once been. But every villager who walked by the farmhouse door glanced at the threshold, half expecting to see green eyes waiting in the dusk. For the cat had left, but not forever. It was only patient. And patience is a power greater than fire, greater than voice, greater even than milk. And so the story ends with the empty threshold. Empty for now.